There we go.
Okay.
All right. Well, welcome viewers to the session 0 of Hyakumonogatari, which is the name of our Fox Magic campaign. My name is Christopher LaHaye. I'm the CEO of Fool's Moon Entertainment and the author of Fox Magic. Fox Magic is a role-playing game where you play kitsune, Japanese fox spirits that are tasked with keeping harmony in the world through duties or mischief, you could say. In our game, we are testing some new rules, which allows for the players to play Obakaneko, which are cat shapeshifters, or European foxes, which are a little bit closer to fairies than they are to typical Japanese spirits. The group is going to be playing in the southern district of Tokyo, which is a region which attracts people from across the globe. One of the largest airports for Tokyo can be found in this district. So over the decades, people from around the world have come in. Their cultures have blended and clashed with the local traditions and beliefs, which has created a very complex blend of spirits within the region, which the foxes are going to be having to look after. The title, Hyakumonogatari, is named for the 100 Candles game that is played in Japan. In the past, samurai would have 100 candles and they'd start telling each other ghost stories. And when a story was finished, they would put out one of the candles. And it was said that when the last candle was put out, something would show up. It was
Ooh.
basically a test of courage.
Uh,
So that's going to be somewhat the theme for the first campaign arc.
right. I do seem to recall that monogatari it means like story. I
Yeah.
think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to have our players introduce themselves. Um, Feel free to start in.
Okay,
Okay. Well.
go ahead.
Okay. I may as well begin because being Christopher's longtime spouse, I like most of his friends tend to call him Kit. Um, yeah, being his longtime spouse, I have been there from the beginning when he was writing Fox Magic and hammering out all of the details and so on. Uh,
So, what's your character's name?
yes. The character I will be playing, and I'm just going to pause to get this up here. It doesn't show very well. Anyway,
Yes.
yes, the character I will be playing is Yukari. She is one of the Shako breed of foxes who are tremendously interested in human inventions, especially in games and machines and other challenges of skill and wit. The sort of concept that I had here is that she's one of these what they call in Japan a NEET, not in education, employment or training, and spends a lot of her time playing video games online. She has the ban that she cannot speak to someone in person unless she has been introduced. Online, she can talk to anybody, but in person, not so much. So some people might think that she's a bit socially awkward. And she does have a little bit of a problem getting things done around the shrine. Not so much because she's intentionally lazy, but I could see a situation like somebody saying, Yukari, it's your turn to sweep the steps of the shrine. And she's going like, but I just started a raid with my group and I'm the DPS. And everybody in the shrine's going, what is she saying?
Nice. Next.
Okay, I will go. My character is not actually a native to Japan. She's from the Great Britain. She's her name is Bryn, and she's a Sihanouk, which is or Shanak. Shanak. I can't say it very well, but
Shinnok.
anyway.
Irish words are
Uh,
hard.
yeah. So European foxes are a little different from the foxes that are native to Japan in that they are a lot of foxes that are native to Japan don't really have much to do with humans, apart from the fact that they have to live amongst them because humans are everywhere. But the European foxes are much more interested in humans as a general rule than other kinds of foxes from other areas. In particular, they're interested in human legends and human heroes and human places of significance. So Bryn is a historian. She is a bard in the sense that she's a storyteller and a keeper of lore. And her particular area of interest, which is related to her family, is she is closely associated with the family of Robin of Locksley and his descendants. So she's intimately familiar with the lore of that, of their family. It's not exactly as you would have in the popular mythology because tales bend and stretch and grow over time. But she is more familiar with the actual story and the actual lore of their family. And she is particularly interested in Robin of Locksley's hat, which she is a kind of guardian of. The legend of that hat within her family history, and it's a representation of what her family views as important. So she is visiting Japan as part of this campaign setting and spending some time with the locals to get to know the area better. Her main abilities are that she's a very good teacher, and she's quite knowledgeable about history. She's also very attractive, so she can get what she wants when she turns on the charm.
Okay. So next.
All right, so my character's name is Mia. She is a Zenko breed of fox. She is the den mother of our fox den. And she, to the humans, is the shrine's gift shop owner. Her bans is that she must keep her area tidy, and if she hears a child cry, she may turn back into a fox because she can transform herself to make herself look like a human.
Anything else you want to say about her? Okay. Next. Munchkin?
Sorry, the muting and unmuting wasn't working properly.
Ah.
Now's probably my best chance to not have sounds interfering.
Okay.
I'm playing Shiori, who is a Reiko Kitsune. It is her responsibility to make sure that the spirits of the dead are placated and that there are no unquiet ghosts in the area, and to protect humans from any unquiet ghosts that appear. She is rather less chill than the den mother and her younger sister, and well, she is certainly much more likely to ask questions second rather than first. One of the primary ways that Shiori goes about doing her duties is that in any cases where there are young kids or teenagers wandering around playing ghost hunter, she makes sure that they are scared off before they can stir up anything that they won't be able to deal with.
Funny you should say that. Okay.
Plot hooks.
Last
but not least, my name is Rezo. I've known everybody, well, most of the people here for a few years now. And I'm going to be playing the cat of the group. His name is Castor.
Oh dear.
Oh dear.
there we go.
Just a
Okay,
second.
yeah, you skipped for a moment. You
Yeah.
frozen. Yeah, okay.
Actually, uh, the whole Zoom died on me for some reason.
Oh dear. Okay, yeah. So yes, we had just heard that you are playing the cat of the group.
Yes. So I'm playing the cat of the group. His name is Castor. He awoke in a wrathful state as his owners disappeared and some new people decided to take him away from his home. And they put him in a moving truck but forgot to close the door. And when his cage fell out, um, he was uh, injured and he awoke and he was very angry. Um,
Oh.
his he does not like enclosed spaces. He's claustrophobic, and he will not enter a room unless there is a second door to that room if it is too small. Um, his his wrathful nature is kind of tempered by his ability to transform into a human, and he takes the form of a human schoolgirl because humans trust those more. Um, his main job is to make sure that human souls are escorted back to their resting place when they get lost.
All right.
He's also lazy,
Like he's a cat.
almost like he's a cat. Yeah, it's crazy.
Just before we get much further, I would like to thank HelloFresh for sponsoring us here. My wife and I have actually tried HelloFresh, and it introduced us to a bunch of different type of meals that we haven't had before, and introduced us to, was it snow peas or snap peas?
Yes, there were two foods that I hadn't tried before and that I discovered I really liked. One of them was a fish called barramundi. I tend to be very picky about what kinds of fish I like. And the other one was sugar snap peas. Yeah, those are good.
Yeah. Anyway, so yes, again, I'd like to thank HelloFresh for sponsoring us, and hope that our viewers will give them a try. So back to the game. We're doing a session 0 here, which is basically we're going to explain the decisions we made for our characters, a bit about how the mechanics work, things like this, so that people who are going to be following us can kind of understand what we're talking about as we go along. The first thing I want to mention is that we're using something called the Advanced Story Point System, or ASPS for short. The core engine will be coming out hopefully in March, and it will be on print on demand. And the way that ASPS works is that it's a very simple, streamlined core engine, which is built to be flexible to any kind of setting that you want. If you want to run a horror campaign, you can actually tweak the engine to handle that. If you want something a little bit more comical, you can do that. Wild West, science fiction, anything you want to do. The engine is made to flex itself to your needs rather than forcing you to follow its rules. Right down to the point where you can decide what attributes you want for your game. And because the core engine is that flexible, any character that you make for any type of setting can just swap into any other setting that's been made by anybody else. This means that any source books that we come out with or that anybody else comes out with, since we're making the game open, you can just transfer characters back and forth. Even if they have different attributes or different backgrounds or different abilities, it's made to allow them to cross-pollinate as you wish. It's called the story point system because the players are going to earn and spend story points, which are things which fuel their stronger powers, but it also gives players the ability to change the scene as it's playing out. So if the player wants to have a favorite NPC show up, they can spend a story point and say, yeah, that person happens to be coming in, or they can change the weather and say, yeah, a storm seems to be rolling in here, which is making our lives a little bit more complicated. Or they can use them to remove things that they don't like. They can say, while they're trying to investigate a place, and I say, yeah, the police are already here and they're, nosing around. Player can spend a story point and say, they don't find anything, they get discouraged, they leave so that we can come in. This allows the players to basically buy into the game a lot more and help tweak the game to their liking. The story point system has 2 modes for this. One, the game master directs the scene, runs the NPCs, runs the story, which is what we're going to be doing, more in line with standard role-playing games. But the other one is the game master states what the scene is, then the players take over and they decide what the story is from that scene. And the game master's role is effectively to herd cats in that case.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the way that this works is whenever the players declare an action, I decide whether or not they're going to be challenged. The players can do this first, however. They can say, okay, it would be interesting if the character failed, so I'm going to ask the other player to roll. The player rolls. If they succeed, they get a benefit. If they fail, the other character takes control of the narration. If the players don't do it, I get to decide whether or not to challenge. And my decision is based on the character's background. If the character's actions match their background and is something that they would obviously be comfortable with, there's no dice roll. They succeed. If it's something that is outside of their comfort zone, then I may tell them to, take a roll. And if it's something that they'd be unfamiliar with or they don't have really any good knowledge for, I can raise the difficulty. So this allows the game to flow a lot faster without having to make checks for every single thing that a character does. It keeps the dice rolls only for when it'd be interesting if they fail, or if it's outside the character's comfort zone, or they're under a lot of stress. This game does not have hit points specifically. What happens is if a character needs to do something, they're spending points off of their attributes. They don't have to, but their chance of success improves if they spend points. And the maximum of their attributes is effectively their health bar for that attribute. They can suffer injuries, which reduces the maximum, which takes longer for them to recover. They can also take basically temporary exhaustion off of their attributes, which they can just recover quickly in between scenes. Do any of my players have any questions about any of this?
Oh, plenty,
Oh.
but I'm not sure I could voice them right at the moment.
Okay.
So I will point out that some of us are probably more familiar with this system than others.
Yeah.
So the other thing is how XP works. Because we're playing what is called cinematic mode, as opposed to what would be the other word? Well, let's say
Guided
that
storytelling.
Yeah. No, actually, this is a little bit different. So there's 2 ways that you can do experience points. One is that the PCs have to get a number of ventures under their belt equal to their next level to level up, or it can be once per adventure, and that's what we're going to be doing here. So the characters are going to level up fairly quickly, but it also means that if they suffer a setback, which is when your hit points for one of your attributes hit 0 and you get injured again, they actually drop a level immediately, as opposed to having a buffer of so many adventures before they actually suffer that setback. So character levels will be going up and down possibly quite a bit during this campaign.
Higher highs, lower lows.
The way I described it in the game engine is that the mode we're using is good for movies, while the other mode is good for TV series. Okay, so let's start talking about the characters. So the foxes, the Japanese foxes in specific, each has a specific boon or ability of theirs. For example, we can show that Val's character Mia, being a Zenko Kitsune, has the ability to sense the presence of spiritual purity, whether it's in an object, a location, a person. The fox actually can see this as almost like a warmth or a glow on that person. And her specific breed of fox are expected to nurture these, protect them, and effectively, if it's a person, try to nudge that person to being like a helpful member of the community, to be almost a hero in some cases. The ban of the Zenko Kitsune is that they can't stand messes. Places have to be tidy, organized, neat, clean. These foxes are the stereotypical fox wives of legend. And then Munchkin's character Shiori, being a Reiko Kitsune, is able to see ghosts. specifically spirits of the underworld as opposed to like blessed ancestors. And she has the ability to actually physically harm them. In fact, she's the only one who can do that. Kat's character,
Yes.
Shiori's duty is to basically protect humanity from the underworld because the underworld is considered to be unclean. Thus, the wrathful dead are, by their nature, unclean. Yeah, so Kat's character Yukari, being a Shako Kitsune, is able to see the spirits found in physical objects that are man-made. So we're talking like brooms, umbrellas, tables, televisions, toys, whatever. She can actually interact with these.
And modern things like computers.
Yeah. The thing is, most of these things are slumbering. It takes about 100 years for something to wake itself up and actually become an actual Japanese creature. But she can kind of nudge them awake early and have them act on her behalf. Her duty is to basically look after the things that humanity has created, make sure that objects are treated with respect, that they're not abused, things like that. So her place is basically to keep civilization itself running smoothly. As Zed had mentioned with his character Bryn, she's a keeper of stories. The foxes of Europe have what are called touchstones. A touchstone is an object or a person or a location which has a sense of legend to it. And the foxes are expected to nurture that legend, make that legend grow, but try to prevent it from being so popular that it gets watered down by society. For example, Stonehenge would normally have be a place of deep reverence and stuff. But there's so many stories about Stonehenge now, and you see it in movies, and you see it in cartoons, and all this other stuff, and people make up all these stories about it, that its legend has been diluted over years, so it's not as potent as it could be. And that is the risk that the European foxes have with their touchstones. They want to nurture the legend and make it grow. They don't want it to become a tourist trap. The cats, Mezzo's character Castor, is an Hyakumonogatari, which is a wrathful version of the cat. Cats don't have duties. They don't have obligations. They don't have any special abilities that pop out because of this. They are basically their own thing. They're independent. They decide what they want to do. They're still Japanese spirits, kami, and because of that, they still are expected to act within their nature. So the cat is going to be a cat. That's just how that works. It happens to be a supernatural cat that if you tick it off enough, it may, swallow a person whole, as cats do.
If they could.
Yeah. But they're still Japanese spirits. And one of the things that people are going to have to keep in mind is that spirits are not innately good or bad. They're good or bad, good or evil, that's irrelevant to them. Spirits act to their nature, and that nature can either be beneficial or harmful to society, but it's never directly malice. With
good and evil are human concepts.
Yes, human constructs. Good is what helps society, evil is what hinders society. The one exception would be creatures of the underworld. Those are actively malevolent. So, with all that being said, I would like my players to talk about the decisions they made for their characters, why they chose whatever, what breed they chose, what background they picked, why they picked that background, which aspects of the character they consider important. In Fox Magic, this would be represented by a high attribute. A high attribute isn't, well, I'm really good at this. It's, I consider this important for my character. So a character that is super strong doesn't necessarily have a high strength attribute if strength is not important. They could actually have a low strength, but because the background says, well, this character is strong, when the character performs feats of strength, I just don't call for a roll because the character is strong. That's fine. So we'll start with Zed. Explain your thoughts behind your character.
So one of the interesting things about the Japanese foxes is that Japanese society prioritizes harmony. European foxes don't really care about harmony directly. They're interested in promoting the welfare of society, but they don't do it the same way because they're very focused on legendary things. And they're very much more individualistic in that sense, in that the things that they prioritize are things that are individual to people in their stories. So my character is part of Robin of Locksley's lineage, and her idea of what is a good thing to do is not necessarily going to align 100% with what the Japanese foxes might think, because her family history is one of standing up against oppression, specifically of oppression by the hierarchy that's in command, right? The
By
nobles
the
have
state.
their thing going on, and maybe it's not going so well for the little guy, so she's going to stand up for the little guy, right? Whereas in Japan, harmony is much more important. So that kind of thing might get washed under the rug a little bit from time to time. She's not really going to stand for that kind of thing. And it's important to her as well because it's important to her family of humans. The Locksley family tree is also kind of got this lineage going on that they are that they're going to try and preserve for themselves, right? So somebody who is a Locksley in true Locksley fashion is not going to stand for problems that result from authority being misused.
And I have a feeling the foxes might have something to do with that.
Yeah. So that's one of the things that's interesting about her. One of the other things about her is that she's a storyteller and a bard. So this is kind of by nature what a Shanach is about. They are about history and of items in particular. And like I said, in this case, there's a Robin of Locksley's hat is maybe in a museum that's on loan from somewhere in England, and she's kind of watching out for that. But while she's here, one of the other things about Shanach is that they love to live life to the fullest. So she's here doing that, but she's also here to have some fun. And, maybe teach some people along the way, maybe learn some new stories, that sort of thing. So her strength is in skill. So she's very skilled as a teacher. More than that, she's also skilled as a bard traditionally would be as a fighter. So she's doesn't do much in terms of like fireballs and stuff like that. That's not her style. She's just a regular combat fighter, but she's able to tell stories and manipulate a situation socially. She's got a silver tongue. She's very good at telling stories that may or may not be true stories, but she's very good at convincing people to see things her way through the use of stories.
So, got a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
What's your highest attribute?
My highest attribute is cunning.
Mm-hmm.
And that is for several reasons. Many of her abilities depend upon cunning. So it's useful for her to have a high cunning because it's going to be going up and down a lot as she uses her abilities. So apart from her silver tongue ability, which is in fact an ability that she can actually tell lies to the point that she can convince people, even if it doesn't entirely make sense. There has to be some kind of kernel of plausibility to it. Mm-hmm. But if it's remotely plausible, she can convince somebody of anything.
So the other question I have for you, popping in here. Okay, so with the European foxes, they develop more touchstones along the way. Do you see anything in Tokyo that your character might decide to take as a touchstone?
It's possible she could come across something like that. In particular, there's a lot of interesting old weapons in Japan, and she is a sword user. So this is also a possibility. One of the other things I should mention about her is that she does not spend very much time as a fox. So one of her other abilities is she's got transform, like some of the other characters do. She spends a lot of time as a human. So using a sword is definitely one of her more comfortable ways of approaching a dangerous situation. She can use guns if a gun presents itself. It's not her preferred
Not likely to
form of
happen.
combat, but
Yeah, not in Japan.
Yeah.
yeah, there are probably not any around. But if she were somewhere else where guns were more prevalent, she might. Even in England, there aren't that many guns. She can use one. She's not that familiar with it, but she has a high skill, which is why if she picks up any human kind of thing, she's liable to be able to use it at least to some degree.
Yes, because in this game, skill is one of the 4 attributes, and it's specifically how well the character can deal with human society effectively.
Yeah.
Okay, so Val, how
the
about
other thing I should mention there, she has one more ability. She has the ability to eat things and regain her attributes from them. It doesn't have to be food, so long as it's organic.
Okay. So, tell us about Mia. Why did you pick that breed of fox, and your background? What did you do to build your character? What was going through your mind?
So when I started creating Mia, one of the first things I wanted to do was create a kind of nurturing fox. I picked Zenko because that seems like something like uplifting heroes is something that I feel like a motherly fox would be very fond of. And I picked the ability transform to allow her to more easily interact with human society, such as owning a gift shop. And the reason I selected the ban of if she hears a child crying, she has to transform is because I figured it would be interesting in a way to play around the idea of like keeping everybody happy, but also like having to run a business at the same time.
I see you need a little kid screaming in your candy shop.
Yes.
So, what is your highest attribute?
My highest attribute is going to be cunning because it ties directly to transform, and I wanted to make sure that through her interactions with the world that she can choose whatever form she wants, and that's why I selected it as my most important.
Has she cultivated any other forms besides her primary human form?
No, not at present.
Not yet. Okay. So, Rezo, let's talk about your character.
Sure.
All right.
I guess what was kind of going through my head was I want to play a cat.
Pretty straightforward.
I was presented with 2 options: the wrathful form and the non-wrathful form, and the benevolent form. And I was, looking at the different myths online about them, and I decided to go with the wrathful form. Mainly because I don't look good as a lucky cat, meow. So at that point, I just started to spin a tale in my head of, how did, young Castor become awakened? And I came up with a story that his owners had found his mother on the streets, and she happened to be pregnant. And so they adopted her and officially gave her the name Wizzy. And of course, Wizzy gave birth to a full litter of kittens, and they all got names similar. So Castor was the runt of the litter. He was called Castor. He has a sister named Witchy, things like that, Magic, Midnight, and they all got adopted out. The parent, his owners, gave them all away except Castor, and then one day his owners didn't come home. His humans didn't come home, and he was kind of confused at the new people that came in and started taking his owner's stuff. And then they packed him in a crate to move him. And like I said, he fell out of the moving truck. and was
Oh.
very, very scared and very upset and angry. So,
I got a,
go ahead.
I got a question for you.
Yeah.
So, your former owners,
Mm.
considering that all the cats have magic-based names, were they former lollygoths,
Um,
or could be fans of magical girls?
so they were an older pair who were immigrants from the United States,
Ah,
and
okay.
so that's why the more English names to all the cats.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yes, they practiced a religion called Wiccan. So
Okay.
that's how the naming scheme went. But as older folks, unfortunately, they passed together, and
Hmm.
I'll save that tragic story for in game if that ever comes up, because it may be
Oh.
something Castor wants to find out.
Now, here's
Yeah,
the
I
other
was
question.
just gonna ask about whether his owners were still around. And okay, yeah. Sorry. Mhm.
Yeah. So the other thing is your character going to learn how to perform magic in the future?
I believe that may be a goal of his, but if it takes too much effort, no.
It's not gonna. I see what you mean. Okay. Yeah. Mechanically, it's fairly straightforward, but for the character, it might be a lot of work.
Yeah,
So,
Castor
what's your
doesn't.
highest attribute?
Castor's highest attribute and his strength are actually the same, and it is spirit. And that is to deal more with the spirits around and the
Mm-hmm.
supernatural.
Yeah.
The material world doesn't fascinate him as much anymore as when he was a kitten.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
That makes sense. Also, of course, with the high spirit attribute, it means that your character might have an inclination towards magic, so that works pretty well.
yeah, I
Okay,
think so.
so yeah, I'm going to interrupt briefly between the introductions. So, as you've heard things about wrathful aspect, benevolent aspect. That's because in Shinto, the spirits, the kami, always have two aspects. It's a wrathful form, which is done to basically bring divine wrath upon the people who have done wrong, and the benevolent form, which is to reward those who are bringing harmony to society. Um, the difference between these two aspects is so extreme that they can be worshipped as separate individuals. Um, but they're still the same person. It's just that it's almost like a complete flip of personality as they go between their two aspects. So, for example, a fox in its peaceful aspect will be this majestic, sleek, very nice form. And when they turn wrathful, the teeth come out, the eyes glow, they get a bit bigger, their fur looks a lot more spikier, they look like a hell fox, that kind of thing. Foxes that have foxfire or with transform can take a really vicious form that can bring terror to anybody that sees it. And in their nice form, they have the sparkling gleam and rainbows, and So,
It's funny you should mention that. One of Castor's abilities is transform, and
mhm,
Castor has three forms. Castor's original form, of course, being cat, which I have a picture of. Um,
mhm.
the second form is that of a schoolgirl, because humans trust those more than school boys. But it's his third form is that of a kaiju. He becomes
Mhm.
very large, size of a small convenience store, I thought, or maybe a bus. And
Oh,
It's
the
the
Neko
Neko
bus.
bus.
yeah,
Yeah.
and in the wrathful form, that is quite terrifying to look upon.
Yeah.
Um,
And as the
most
character gets ranks of levels, their war form, so their kaiju form, can actually get fairly large. We're not talking like Godzilla levels of huge. That's actually a daikaiju. A kaiju is basically monstrous. We're talking, as he said, the size of a school bus would actually be appropriate at some point. The foxes, for example, because everyone's level 1, their combat form is probably up to, say, a human shoulder, which is fairly large for a fox.
the caster probably starts out at that too, and will grow over
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
His other abilities are animate and sin eater, which means he can eat the sin of an area and cleanse it.
Num num.
Hmm.
So, Munchkin, tell us about Shiori.
So, as I said before, Shiori is a Reiko, and Shiori is the only one of the Den Foxes who starts in her wrathful aspect.
Mhm.
It is her responsibility to make sure that humans aren't disturbing the dead and putting themselves in danger and inviting the forces of Yomi into the world. If
Mhm.
she finds someone who is, in fact, inviting the forces of Yomi into the world, she's not going to take that lightly. Shiori is also the only player character at this point who is not yet a shapeshifter. Interacting with humans is not really her priority unless they've done something wrong. And she doesn't really need to blend in as much for that.
Can she speak
Um,
human?
Shiori does not at this point have human speech.
Okay.
What Shiori can do, however, if communication is a must, is she has the ability to weave illusions. And so if she needs words spoken, she can have an illusion say them.
And she could
I
also
thought
use
that
her
would be
illusion
an
for human form.
interesting way to deal with her general lack of familiarity with the social aspect of humanity. Shiori also has the ability to conjure foxfire. And she will typically do this in the form of supernatural flames. They'll be off-colored depending on her temperament. Um, she's not yet a shapeshifter, so her primary ban, according to her breed, is not yet affecting her as much, and it's that shadows of natural light and reflections will reveal her true nature. However, she also has a secondary ban, which causes her to need to reciprocate the behavior of those around her. Kindness is rewarded with greater kindness, and cruelty rewarded with greater cruelty.
Mhm.
It plays more into the back and forth between the benevolent and malicious, or not malicious, but
Malevolent.
wrathful aspects. Um, so that kind of increases the overall perception of being chaotic without actually delineating from her nature.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, as Munchkin had mentioned, because she's always in her fox form, her shadow tends to take a human-like shape if it's struck by natural light. So, like, if she's inside, light bulbs and stuff aren't going to do anything. But if she's out in the sun or there's a candle light or firelight, you're going to see this human shape on the wall, which could freak people out. Or, reflection in the mirror will show a bit of a human shape there. Things like that to, disturb people.
mhm. But
So,
these are things that Shiori could use in her advantage,
mhm.
especially considering her common pastime of stalking those pesky ghost hunters who have no idea what they're doing, wandering around with their camcorders and their spirit boxes.
So why did you pick a anti-ghost hunter?
I thought it would be an interesting take on Shiori's duties. It does make sense. Anyone who's stirring up the wrathful dead is going to be a problem that Shiori is going to have to deal with. So Shiori decided to take a rather proactive approach and simply prevent such situations from occurring in the first place. And if it happens to let her get a little trickery in, well, she's all for that. Um,
Wrathful Dead, streaming soon on a television near you, but only for one season.
hmm.
So, what's your highest attribute?
I actually have Shiori's attributes relatively balanced just because of the fact that I did spend an extra ability point in order to take a third or I spent an attribute point to take a third ability. And so her cunning, spirit, and wisdom are actually all equal.
Well rounded.
Her weakest attribute being skill, because again, she's not really interacting with humans very much.
Yeah.
And any sort of feat of skill she would need to accomplish as a fox, she's typically got that in her background of she's stalking mortals around unseen, and she knows how to manipulate her environment without being spotted. Um, all of these things really make up for anything that the lowered skill attribute might cause difficulty for um, outside of the actually interacting with humans.
Uh, as Munchkin has mentioned, the character has illusion, and what this means is that much like fairy glamour, her illusions have a substance of reality to it. So, like, if she picks up an illusionary sword, she can beat people with it. If she takes a physical object, which can act as a representation or at least give some sort of symbolic representation, the illusions become a lot more real. So, for example, if she has a hat, for example, she could do an illusion of human form and interact with people, and her illusionary human will have a tangible sense. She can make fake servants, which will have their own personalities, and can even linger when she stops focusing on them. So, fox illusions can be very, very useful. Just as a quick aside, in a previous campaign, we had somebody fighting a giant spider, and the question was, "Hey, is he under a tree?" Yes. Are the leaves on that tree? Yes. I turned one of those leaves into an anvil.
Squish.
So, yes, it works just fine. Or they were fighting an ogre, and it's like, yeah, so we're standing on the edge of a volcano. He's swinging his club back to smack us. It grows 3 times its size. So the ogre suddenly holding this huge club and tumbles off into the volcano. Yeah, so that's the kind of mischief that Shiori is capable of.
Indeed.
Yeah. So, anything else you want to mention about? Oh, that's the question I was going to ask. Is Shiori going to learn exorcism at some point, do you think?
I suppose that depends on her needs.
Mhm.
Shiori and Caster often team up in their related, well, for Shiori it's an obligation. For Caster it's a hobby, I suppose. Um,
When I feel
but
like it.
they'll often tag team, as it were, when
Mhm.
there are disturbed ghosts. The wrathful ones Shiori will take care of, and those who are just lost, Caster will lead back home.
Sounds good.
Um,
Are you going to pick up the Reiko ability to eat the dead?
Potentially.
Ooh.
Okay. So, Kat, finally, your character, Yukari. So, what
Okay.
inspired you?
I pretty much wanted to make a very modern sort of fox. Often people look at fantastical creatures and they just sort of assume that they're going to be somehow relics of a forgotten age, and
Old-fashioned.
yes, or old-fashioned in some way. And sure, some of them may well be, but that doesn't mean all of them have to be. And another part of my inspiration was very simple: the profusion of people, especially young women, who loving cat ear and other animal ear headphones,
Mhm.
especially when they're gaming online. I also often use artwork as inspiration. I'll look for pictures. I'll look for evocative pictures, and I found one that didn't have the animal ear headphones, but did have a young red-haired woman, obviously playing online with a game controller, and a very mischievous smirk, which I loved. I've pinged the artist to ask if I could use this on a stream. I have not gotten a reply. I don't know how often this person's online. And I hesitate to use to show it if I don't have permission.
Mhm.
Yeah. So just popping up my sheet to have a look here. She has the transform ability, obviously, because it would be very difficult to be a modern kind of fox without that.
Does she keep the
She
headphones around her neck in fox form?
That sounds cool.
That quite possibly. One of her abilities is called Kikai no Kokoro, that, as I recall, and Kit might want to fill in details if I've forgotten, that is being able to examine any human-made object and figure out what it is for, and some of its history as well. So you look at an object and go, "Tell me your secrets," as it were.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's kind of like the spirit reading thing where you touch an object and you get visions.
Yes, kind of. Except also, I recall a little more utilitarian, because
Mhm.
you can figure out what is this thing for.
Yeah, what's the password for this computer? Oh, that's what it is.
Yeah.
That's why she's so good at the first-person shooters.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
You're using an aimbot, aren't you? No.
No, I don't have to.
It's an aim spirit.
She is
Exactly.
the aimbot.
Shh.
She'd be evil at Among Us.
Yeah. Another ability another ability that she has, which people might not have guessed at, for someone who's sometimes reputed to be a bit of a shut-in, is the community skill, or ability. Sorry, not ability, not skill. And that is basically being able to read the overall health and character of the people in her domain, as it were.
Yeah. So, because of her character's background, her power of community basically hooks her into geek culture. So, at any point, she can look at somebody who's part of that culture and go, okay, this is the person. Here's a little bit of their background. This is their general state of being. And she can call on them to basically help her out of the blue.
Yeah, I gave her the condition network of gaming geeks. So I figured if we're in the middle of investigating something, she might take out her phone, snap a picture, and then suddenly be sharing it on social media or on her gaming group's Discord and go, "Hey, anybody know what this thing is?" And somebody might go, "Oh yeah," and tell her some information.
I have an interesting suggestion based on that. Maybe some audience participation. Whenever you do that, we actually open up to the chat and ask the chat for advice.
Oh, that's cool.
That sounds really good.
Do you think that would be a thing that could work?
As long as chat is responsive. I obviously
And responsible.
responsible, yeah. Give it a couple minutes, and of course, if nobody would reply, or nothing is appropriate for the situation, we could make something up for the story. But getting the audience participation would be pretty cool, I think.
Yep.
Oh, that's neat.
Okay, so what is her highest attribute?
She actually, like Munchkin, I decided to go with a very well-rounded kind of thing. I don't often like to have anything that's an extreme weakness. So the breed's strength is cunning. However, I thought skill would be the most used thing for this character. So for her, both cunning and skill are at 3.
Sounds good.
And I had originally put wisdom, was it wisdom or spirit?
Yes. Yeah, wisdom is your lowest.
Yeah, I had originally put wisdom as the lowest, and then spirit as the second lowest. Currently, her spirit and wisdom are both at 2.
Sounds good. Okay, so now that we've done the introductions and a discussion about the backgrounds, how are the characters going to know each other? Obviously, the 3 foxes of the Fox Den know each other fairly well. We have the Reiko and the cat, which seem to team up from time to time and handle things. So how does our European fox Bryn work with this group?
Well, she's a historian. So she is probably in the area studying the history of the shrine and learning about lore in the area in general. So she would have come across them just by happening to be in the area and seeing them around doing
Sounds
their
good.
things.
The other thing that comes to mind is, and this is actually something, the shrine is based on a real shrine in Tokyo. This shrine is known to have lucky sand. People will come in, they will actually take sand, put them in their pockets, and go off with the sand. I'm pretty sure there's a ritual or something involved with this, but this is a famous aspect of the shrine. Do you think you might use this, the sand as a touchstone in the future?
Maybe. I haven't thought about that, but it's a possibility.
Given the nature of touchstones, I feel that that would dilute it immediately. Everybody knows it's lucky sand.
Yes, but they're not. It's not like a tourist trap thing. There's not like in the gift shop, for example. There's not bags of lucky sand to buy, that kind of thing. It's not been diluted by people basically watering down the stories of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I figured I kind of had an idea.
Mhm.
At least for the three of us, a meeting that actually took place likely in a local cemetery. Um, Castor's human form usually tends to grave sites. Sometimes she'll wander through a graveyard and clean off headstones, place flowers and incense and whatnot.
Mhm.
And during that time, maybe a group of ghost hunters decided it was time, the sun's going down. Let's wander into this graveyard with a spirit box and maybe a spirit board, and let's see if we can contact the dead. And this, of course, would have angered Castor, and also
Shiori would
Shiori,
have been following them,
and Shiori
keeping
would have
them
followed
out
them.
of trouble in the most mischievous way she knows how.
Absolutely. At the same time, Bryn could have been studying something in the graveyard, perhaps a historical figure's monument, to try to, either make it a touchstone or to just research its history, maybe get a rubbing of it or something. And
There could be a Loxley ancestor there.
could be.
It could.
It would be rare, but yeah, could be. Um, And during that time, of course, Castor would want to chase away the ghost hunters as much as Shiori would. That would be where everybody kind of discovers everybody's true nature. And
That sounds good.
we're all friends now. Well, maybe.
Maybe.
Especially
Well,
since...
also that
Yeah.
also allows Bryn to actually stay at the den.
Right.
Yes.
And Castor, too, because,
Mhm.
that would be their first meeting, I would think.
That
Now,
sounds good.
one thing I will point out that didn't get mentioned before is that Bryn, as unlike the European foxes in general, and Bryn in particular, is unlike the Japanese foxes. She does not have an aspect, so she's always kind of neutral as far as her temperament goes. But being as she does have transform, she does have access to a war form as well if she needs one.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, the thing
like
about
I said, she prefers to use a sword.
Yeah, the thing about aspects is definitely worth pointing out for our audience. And yeah, I seem to recall Munchkin and Val and I were also talking about how the den might interact a little bit. Yukari would probably drop by the convenience store every so often just to pick up snacks. and
Snacks are good. Bryn loves
yeah,
snacks.
exactly, because you need to keep your energy up when you're when you're
telling stories.
Yes, when you're in the middle when you're in the middle of a campaign, and Shiori could probably use Yukari's breed weakness against her a little bit. The Shako have that thing that some trickster figures have of being very, very proud of their own wits. So she cannot resist any challenge of wits or skill. So if Shiori was like, hey, why don't you use some of that technological know-how or the knowledge of the people around here to help me scare off this bunch of idiots who are invading this space, she would go for it.
Something that I just remembered, thanks to Zed. So, the Shannock have a specific ban, which is called an echo, an aura that is related to the fox in some fashion. What is Bryn's echo?
Bryn's echo is that whenever she's using her ability or appearing in a scene, typically what will happen is a gust of wind will come into the scene and start just for a few moments, a breeze will pass by. Typically her hair will shift and other people's hair might shift too. It is a breeze after all.
It'd be funnier if nobody else's did.
It might be funnier, but it also might be harder to hide the fact that she's different.
That is the point of the ban, yes.
Yes.
She brings
the other
her
thing
own
she
dramatic
has, though, is
wind.
she does also have a band of truth. So if somebody does figure out that she is in fact a fox, she has to deal with one of two things. Well, she can spend a story point or a cunning or something like that, one of her resources, in order to ignore that problem, or else she has to either confess that she is in fact a fox, in which case she cannot take advantage of her human form for a while, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
Her third option is to flee the scene and basically say, I'm out of here. You guys deal with this until the next scene, and then she will show up again.
You're on your own. Now, the other thing I will mention, this is mostly for the audience. The European fox, this breed specifically, has the ability to make temporary touchstones. It costs an experience point to do this. So it's not something that the fox is going to do often. It's only going to be done when it's important, because that's a level for the fox. But in that case, it's, this new thing is going to be a touchstone. It now has a bit of legend of its own, which will draw in people, and that can be cultivated.
Right. But if she finds something...
this is very important, because European foxes can lose their touchstones, and you do not want to lose your last touchstone.
Yeah. She can find things that already have some legend to them, though, in which case she doesn't have to spend that resource or that level, because it already has enough history to it that she can just bond with it.
Yes.
But
if you can't find anything, you have a backup.
Her current touchstone is Robin's hat, which, like I said, is probably in a museum somewhere right now being loaned on display or something like that.
Here's a question.
Go ahead.
What if there's a Robin Hood exhibit going on at the local museum?
Yes, pretty much exactly what I had in mind.
And what if, say, Loxley's bow was stolen?
Loxley's bow? Well, that's not her touchstone, but she would be very interested in it.
That's the point, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a potential touchstone.
Yeah, it's a potential touchstone.
Okay.
Her hat actually does have, or Loxley's hat actually does have some abilities associated with it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't, to my understanding, you can invoke the legend without actually having it in your possession. You just have to be able to invoke its legend with the people that it matters to.
Yes.
So one of its facets is that it can be associated with boldness and inspiration on the one hand. And on the other hand, a hat can also be used to conceal and to, what was the other phrase I used here?
That whole thing of going to the archery contest in disguise.
Being concealed or elusive. So those are it's a double-sided hat, in the sense that on one hand, if you turn out the colors, you're bold and you're inspiring, or you're inspired by the situation you're in. And on the other hand, it can be concealing and elusive. And this is important as well for her family as well, because that's part of the things that they're associating with this legend.
So, an interesting thing about these foxes is that their abilities can overlap. For example, Bryn can invoke the Luxley hat. If Bryn actually has the physical hat, Yukari can speak to the spirit of the hat because it's over 100 years old, which means that it's awakened.
Oh.
So you can actually have the spirit of the hat manifest. Then Shiori, with illusion, can actually give that spirit a physical body. So, which would then actually be tangible. You could bring Robin Hood to life.
That'd be cool.
Neat.
One of the other things about illusions is that other foxes can contribute to the illusions by spending spirit on them.
Yeah.
Even if they don't have the ability, so long as the person who has the illusion has actually started an illusion.
One of the most famous ways to do this, and this is probably Shiori's job, is fox dens tend to be bigger on the inside. So,
yes.
there was probably like a fox tunnel somewhere on the shrine estate, probably buried underneath the shrine itself, which it opens up into like a multi-room, suite that all the foxes get to use, complete with staff.
That was actually a question I
Like
had.
it would be, considering that this is, well, Shiori's been around for a while, and one of the things that illusion can do is that if you put enough power into it, it will just keep on being, even if you're off doing whatever.
You were saying, Rezo?
Actually, my question was, does the shrine itself have human tenders, and do they know who we are?
Yes, and the second one is it depends. Do the foxes want the human attendants to know that there are actual spirit foxes in the area, or do they just see you as normal mundane foxes, which they tend to pamper?
Ah.
I would tend to think that the most important person, or a handful of the most important people, might know. But
So the head priest
most.
and a number of the Miko. Okay.
Yeah, and this of course is something we something to hammer out. Just as we were choosing the benefits for the benefits
The domain
and
as a whole.
advantages and disadvantages for our den.
This also sets a standard for the campaign itself, because if the priest and the Miko know that you are actual spirit foxes and supernatural creatures, that means that the general population is more aware that supernatural creatures exist. That let's say that ups the fantastical aspect of the campaign. If, for example, you said no, then the supernatural would be a lot more hidden in the campaign. So this is basically a decision that influences the campaign as a whole.
How over the top anime do we want to be?
That is a very
legitimate question.
I really like the idea of having to hide it, especially because the dead mother also runs a gift shop for the shrine.
Yeah. Well, see, that could be a secret.
Yeah.
It's not like, hey, you have to go to this shrine. Did you know there's an actual fox spirit that runs the gift shop? And it was like, what?
No.
Yeah, you can keep that hidden.
We're a little more subtle than that.
Yeah. So I mean, it sounds like we all want to do the hidden world kind of modern fantasy, but it's the question is how hidden.
It's more Shaman King than, say, I don't know. One of those really over the top ones.
Yeah.
So my thought would be like, try and keep it pretty quiet.
Yeah.
But not necessarily 100% quiet.
Yeah, you don't have Miko Mimi walking down the street.
Around, after all.
Yeah,
exactly.
If there are ghost hunters around, they've got to be doing something. So probably at least the head priest knows, and I don't know if you guys want anybody else to know.
Well, it'd help if the Miko knew.
Yeah,
it would help.
Yeah, it also means that that if we get discovered, we're not gonna be like thrown out or of the shrine.
Staff can cover for you.
Yes, that, which is good, especially since
So it sounds like we're back to my original, the head priest and a few of the Miko.
Yeah. I think that's a good thing to note down.
There's a fox with a headphone around its neck. Oh yeah, that one steals it from time to time. One of the other, the priest actually, collects these kind of games and stuff. Just happens to like that one.
Yep. I mean, animals are funny. They do run off with stuff.
Oh gods, yes.
Especially foxes.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
All right, so I think that pretty much covers all the ground that we have to do for now. The actual sessions that we're going to have will usually run between 2.5 to 3 hours, depending. 8 p.m. till 11 p.m. on Thursdays, Eastern Standard Time. Is there anything anybody wants to say before we wrap this up?
I think I'm good.
I think we're good to go.
All right then.
I look
Well,
I'm
forward
thank
to
you.
very
playing with
much
you all.
looking forward to playing
Yeah.
with you all.
Yes.
I do remember that next week one of the players will not be able to make it. Because this is first session, that should not be a problem. We should still be able to play. That fox is off doing fox business.
Okay.
So we will be playing next week. Thank you everyone for watching, and thank you everyone for being here. Take care and stay safe.
Have a
Take
good
care.
night.
Have a good evening, folks.
Have a good night.
Yes. Good night.